It was the continuous ear-piercing, blood-curdling screaming that pulled her back into the realm of consciousness. It was the kind of scream that would make you jump out of bed at night ready to run or fight whatever had caused it. Dani did not jump up, nor did her awakening happen quickly. She faded back into existence into the dark world behind her eyelids. Her body was still heavy, unwilling to bend to her desire to move. Something in the haze of her own mind did recognize the peril, and tried to pry her eyes open by pure will. Bright blurry light filtered in, her eyes still not focused enough to gather the details. She tried to shake the blur away, but stopped when a sharp pain throughout her head caused her to grit her teeth. Instead she sat still, allowing her eyes to rest a moment while she took in information with her other senses. The first thing she noticed was the subtle mix of several different perfumes alongside the overly clean smell reminiscent of a hospital. She heard whimpering and sobbing of several women off to her right. The screaming had stopped, a fact that brought her little comfort. She felt the dull ache of her back as metal bars dug in, and her hands rested on a cold tile floor. She tried to pry her eyes open again. It was still blurry, but she was starting to be able to make out some details. She could see the bars in front of her as well, between them the blurred semblance of bright white walls. There was a grayish counter with various objects she couldn't yet make out. A bright manila blob caught her eyes. A slight wave of relief washed over her. Perhaps not all was lost after all. She rolled her head to the right, away from the bright light and into the darker corner. The images came into focus a lot quicker, which gave her a look at the women huddled there. They were of all shapes and sizes ranging in age from their teens to mid-20s. Only one of them showed any sign of pregnancy, the oldest looking one sitting directly in the corner of the cage. Despite the woman's condition, she comforted another girl that couldn't be a day older than 16 that was sobbing in her shoulder. Her makeup ran down her face in streaks, but that was the only sign of distress she wore. Dani blinked a few times and glanced out the corner of her left eye to test if she could handle the light. She could now make out various instruments lining the counter that marked the room they were imprisoned in, a lab. She turned her head slightly to confirm the manila blob was what she had expected. That was her folder filled with images, documents, and files. If she could only get to it, everything would be worth it. As she worked movement back into her limbs, a metal door on the right side of the room opened up, allowing two men in blood-splattered lab coats to enter. One pulled out a key, unlocked the cage, and opened it. The other reached in and grabbed the young sobbing woman and pulled her away from the elder one. The elder woman tried to hold on and pull her away, but she slid across the tile as she pleaded to let the girl go. The girl herself screamed and kicked as she grabbed onto everything she could. The pleas and fighting failed to have any effect on the man. His face remained placid and emotionless through the whole ordeal. The older woman glanced over at Dani with expectant eyes. A pang of guilt ran through her as she made eye contact with the woman. In her current state, there was little she could do against two grown men. Even if she was in full health, she might be able to conjure a spell or two to take them out, but there were surely others nearby. Besides, her main task was to get that folder. She couldn't do anything that might jeopardize that. She looked back at the woman and frowned slightly. The woman must have read the message in her expression, because she tried to crawl to the cage door before the man absent-mindedly slammed the door. As the pregnant woman crawled back to her corner, she gave Dani an accusing glare.